Watercolor needs water almost as much as Nicholas Holman needs art. Yes, that badly. From having everything going wrong after moving across the country to focus on his art, to becoming a TikTok sensation, Nick's story is bound to inspire you no matter at what stage in your journey you're at. If you'd like to know more, then please join us today as we discuss Nick's crazy roller coaster like story, why a painting can bring up emotions and thoughts that the real life subject cannot, going viral on TikTok, tips on adding depth to your gouache paintings, and how creating can ignite creativity. Want to be part of the show? Then send in your questions or topics you'd like to see covered to our email at hello@etralab.com. If you send us an audio recording, we might include it in the episode. Hi, I'm Anya, and this is Make More Art, a podcast by Etra, meant to inspire you to keep on creating. Now let's hear from our guest. Nick.
Yes.
I have a bunch of questions for you. A lot of your art inspires me. And when I was looking through your feed and starting to get to know you through your art, I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. We need to have him in the podcast. So before we start with that, can you take us all the way back? I know you started art relatively recently, but 2015, if I'm not mistaken. But when was that when you realized that art needed to be part of who you were, or was that earlier? So when did that start?
No, yeah, so that actually was in I would say the end of 2014 into 2015. It's weird because art runs in my blood. My mom's an artist, she's a painter. My grandma retired as an art teacher. My aunt is a professional painter. So art really is in my blood, but ironically enough, I didn't have that like artistic grounding that you would think. Like when I say those three people are artists, you would be like, "Oh, you must have had an incredibly creative childhood." But and my mom always gets mad at me when I say this, but I don't think that it was that creative. Like when I imagine my kids' childhood, it's going to be filled with creativity, and I don't feel like that. So yeah, anyway, art's in my blood, but it was on my own discovery, and that's why I think it came so late. So it was just on my own finding. I wanted to be like marine biology, I wanted to be a meteorologist, I wanted to like really do something with the earth and the planet. And then I discovered art, and I just like, so what originally got me to draw was that I wanted to draw my own tattoo. Hindsight, I'm glad I didn't get that tattoo because my drawings were not good. So yeah, thankfully that didn't happen. But it was that act of drawing that I realized, because nothing had ever like made me draw before. Like I was always doodling on homework and I was creating a lot of things, but I didn't have that conscious awareness of like, I love this, I need to do this. Like through high school, like I wasn't one of those kids that was like sketching in the corner. I was like in choir and theater and like in the middle of everything. I wasn't.
You were singing, dancing, acting. You were super creative though, I guess, right? You're just not doing. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't doing like art, like representational physical art. Even though I loved art class, I just like wasn't like aware of how much I needed it. And to be honest, I totally sucked at school. I was a really bad student, except for choir, theater, and art. But, I mean, I passed high school by the skin of my teeth. I was not a good student. So yeah, it was on my own discovery. And then once I realized that like I love this, I got this like tiny little set of watercolors, and I haven't stopped since. And I mean that, like I have not stopped.
So what was the aha moment for you? Like when did it click?
The aha moment was when I combined watercolor and ink, which is like ink and wash or whatever. I did this tutorial, and ironically enough, I wasn't one of those people that was like obsessed with YouTube tutorials, which you would think, because that's like what younger artists like in our generation, they do because YouTube is so accessible. But I wasn't gravitating towards that. I was just painting. And I actually did this because I did like a total of like 3 tutorials when I was starting out, which I feel like is not normally how it goes. But I did this tutorial, and it was watercolor, and then you ink it, like you
Mhm.
just fill in that drawing. And it was the definition of an epiphany. It was like, this is it. I will never stop this. So at that time I was in Florida, and I was like, okay, like I need to go to art school. This is it, like art school. And so I start looking, and there just happened to be an art school an hour away. And I didn't do any research more than that. So come to find out, it's a very prestigious college. It's a private art school. It's called Ringling College of Art and Design. So I applied to that. I get in. I did some of my best drawings to get in. Like I drew my
Mhm.
feet, and I've never drawn like my own body part. And so I end up getting in, and there has never been a moment where everything felt so right. Like sitting in a class and
Wow.
someone is just teaching me about art. I've just never felt, and I was older. So I'm like, I think I was like 21 or 22, and I'm surrounded by 17 and 18-year olds.
Mhm.
And I am just enamored and just like, I'm just obsessed with this. I'm literally, it was like a child learning about like why the sky is blue. I was just so like learning perspective, and there's like 2 points of perspective and the horizon line. And I'm just like, man, there's like math behind art. And like, oh my God. And you could talk to any of my professors. I would stay after class. I would ask so many questions. I drove an hour each way. I was always early. I had everything I needed. I was just obsessed. I truly was fascinated. And I was just like the driest sponge that absorbed every word that they said.
Oh my
Um,
God. You could be a
yeah, it
meme, like
was,
every single art student when they learn about perspective. Oh my God, there's math. And then Nick, oh my God, there's math?
yeah, yeah, no, seriously. So I only ended up going there for a year and a half just because it was very, very expensive, like way, way
Hmm.
very expensive. Um, so that was like 2017, I think. And then that's really when I hit the ground running of like, how do I make money from this? How do I dive deeper into this and make this a real thing? Um, I was serving on the side for
Hmm.
many, many years. But yeah, I just did everything I could to find my style, find what I'm good at, find what people like, and just dive into this. And here I am now. So
Wow. So that was, so you were 22 at the time, you're now 27-ish.
yeah,
So
I'm 27
you,
now.
yeah, you dropped out of art school, right? Because of the
Hmm.
pricing. And
Hmm.
after more or less how long? A year? A few months?
Yeah, I went for 3 semesters, so a year
Okay.
and a half.
Okay, a year and a half. So, and after you got out up until today, you've been doing what, self-discovery, going into your art journey yourself. Is that it?
Yeah, so much self-discovery. I always wanted like a higher education, so I started looking for ateliers, because generally ateliers are cheaper and they're slower. So it's where you're an apprentice to like a living master, and you just learn like the classical way of drawing, like Michelangelo learned. And I was really, really intrigued with the ateliers. So I started traveling the country to find one, because there's like 67 registered ateliers in
Mm.
America. And so I went to Pennsylvania. There's an atelier up there, and it's totally free. And obviously, that is attractive. And then I visited another atelier in Seattle. And then the last one I visited was in Phoenix, Arizona. And it wasn't free, but it was really, really affordable. And I loved this man's work. His name is Timothy Reese. So I decided on that school. And so in 2020, me and my partner and our 5 animals moved from Florida to Arizona for me to attend this atelier. And I was going for about a month, maybe even 3 weeks, and then the pandemic hit. So I was doing some studies at home, but also like we both lost our jobs. So I dove into art even more, like doing pet portraits and like paying bills, all of that stuff. We're in a
Mhm.
brand new city. We didn't know anyone. Um, and
Wow.
then I think like maybe a month later, the master, Tim Reeves, he decided to close his school forever. So the school that I had been waiting for, I moved across the country for,
Oh my
closed
God.
forever because it's just him and all of his students dropped out. So it's like, how could he run a school?
Yeah.
So I will say in hindsight now, like that was meant to happen.
Mhm.
But in that moment, that was devastating, because I saved so much for that move. The move took 4 days. It was just huge. But obviously, like all of us, the pandemic really changed our lives. So, but yeah, so it was like self-discovery, and then I found that school. The school didn't work out. And then I moved back home, which is Missouri. So this is where I
Mhm.
was born and raised.
Mhm.
And it's really been amazing since I've come back here. And it's just kind of it's came to show me that it doesn't really matter where you're at. As long as you're doing what you love, I think people will gravitate to you. And
Mhm.
so that's when my TikTok really started to take off. I went viral a few times. I believe that's where Etcher found me, is through some of
Yeah, I
those
think so
videos,
too.
possibly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And yeah, I've just had a lot of amazing opportunities because I've found a platform to show my personality, my love for makeup and expression, but also my extreme love for painting.
Yeah, and everything ties really well together with TikTok as a platform. Social media has been a lot on my mind, a lot in my mind lately. That's why I'm like, of course you'd go viral on TikTok. You are so expressive with your words. I mean, your art is amazing and it's visual and it's an image, but the way that you present your content through words is so honest and captivating that, of course, you'd go viral on TikTok. It's the platform that makes the most sense for you, I think. Looking at
Hmm.
you, and I'm just meeting you now, so my two
Yeah.
cents. So you came from having this devastating blow back to your hometown, got yourself back on your feet, and 2021 started with your face paintings.
Yeah. For F Word magazine.
And they have such positive, like the messaging that you're passing on with each one in your stories, in your Instagram is just so positive. Like, be strong, believe in yourself, and like everyone needs to hear that. And there's so many of
Mhm.
them. So how did that sequence start, and how could you be so positive when you were just coming back from a devastating blow yourself?
So I think my positivity comes from the fact that I'm just like always trying to do better.
Mm.
And the fact that I did end up getting this platform that I've never had before and that I'm actually making an impact, it's like the, the biggest fire in my gut ever of like, people care what I'm doing, they're inspired by me, and this is really powerful. So then F Word magazine, oh, so the series started, and this is why they reached out with me, is because I started painting around the world because I love traveling. We all love traveling, but no one should be traveling. And it
Mhm.
wasn't, I was specific on my words, and it's like, we can travel, but I was saying no one should be traveling because I didn't want to, I wanted to be careful with my words. You shouldn't be traveling. Like, let's be responsible. And that was, back when I started. Things are getting better now, thankfully. Um, but yeah, so I started painting around the world, and I started with Belgium, and I use this app or website. It's called randomstreetview.com.
Mm.
So it takes you into a random street, and you can look around. It's Google Maps, so if anyone's used that, but you can look around, but it's random. So you just click a button, and it's totally random. So I ended up in Belgium on this adorable street with these adorable buildings, very European. It was perfect. And I was like, um, showing people what I'm looking at, and then I paint it. And that was my first travel series that went
Mhm.
viral. I think it's at like it's well over 1 million views, which is just crazy to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then a person in Belgium went to the location and videoed the whole thing. So the fact that I'm painting this location, that's cool. All of these people have now laid their eyes on this, which they would have never seen prior, even if it's not in person. But then to have a Belgian person go take us there and play the same song that I was playing. She got out
Oh,
in the street and she was like, her dad drove her there and she was like dancing in the street. And it's like, that's the house that I painted. And it gives me chills even talking about it. It was just so
oh my
magical. It's only
God.
happened once, so no one else has duetted anything yet, but it was just so cool that I'm doing this little connection, and this little moment that is just so special. So yeah, F Word Magazine saw that and they're like, "Hey, we love your World Series. We want to turn this into a makeup look. Do you think you can do that?" And I was like, "Ah, I've never even thought of that. Yeah, I can do that. Let's do that." So yeah, I just painted 4 landscapes on my face, and I even did font, and I shot my own photos, and I don't know. It was just so cool. And I think positivity comes from all of those amazing things happening, because I chose to paint this thing, but make a video and bring people along. So I don't know. It's just really powerful.
It is. And you earlier you said when you do something you love, people are drawn to it. Why do you think that
Mhm.
happens?
Because they see the passion in your eyes. Like I've had so many people comment, like, I know nothing about painting, but this video was amazing. Or I know nothing about art, but I appreciate this because of how you're talking about it. And it's like, I mean, it could be a makeup artist. Like if they post videos about how much they love makeup and how passionate they are, people will gravitate to that. You love landscaping, same thing. You love plants, like I just think people are drawn to passion and creativity and the confidence that I exude and my love for this. I don't know. I just think I um, show people like what they want to see.
Art as a form of
Yeah.
empathy. Would you agree?
Yes, I do.
Cool. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
more about your art specifically. So I was looking into your Instagram, into your website. I saw a lot of fundamental practice, a lot of anatomy, and I saw you using different mediums. What medium do you
Mhm.
love the most?
So gouache has my heart. I love gouache to the day I die. Um, I do. I love gouache. I don't know. It's that medium that it's like I understand. It understands me. I know what I like in it and how you know what I mean? Like every part of gouache just works for me. Um, but I will say, as long as I'm painting, I'm content. I just love painting. So I use gouache, watercolor, oils. I do a lot of digital work too. I work
Mhm.
for a licensing company, so everything I send them is digital. Um, I really enjoy charcoal and pastels because it's
Mhm.
almost like a dry form of painting, you know?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Gouache is my favorite, but if I'm painting, I'm happy.
I just love how you said you understand gouache and gouache understands you, as if the painting itself was a living being. So amazing. And
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
are
It just
go ahead.
makes sense. No, yeah, I just gouache
I
makes
could,
sense to me. That's
yeah, I can see it. I mean, if you're watching the audio version of this episode, you should give a listen and see the video version in our YouTube channel because Nicola's face and expression while talking about this is just mind blowing, amazing. What about your favorite subject? So, what do you enjoy painting the most?
landscapes for sure. That's
Hmm.
definitely top tier for me. I just think it's really cool that you can bring something so, like, I'm looking out my window right now. You can bring something so vast to life on, like, on paper, on a panel, on canvas. And if you do it well, you can really have the viewer understand just how vast or um, dense or, three-dimensional that space is, like, I don't know, something about landscapes, they're just free, they're my interpretation, they're my choice, and I don't know, they're just liberating, I really
Yeah.
think they are. Whereas like portrait painting, I don't I'm getting more into portraits, but I don't enjoy them as much because we all know what humans look like.
Hmm.
And if you see a human that doesn't look right, it stands out like this, even if you know nothing about art. So I just think the the freedom isn't really there because we all expect a human to look a certain way, you know? And I even feel that way. Like I want my portraits to look a certain way, and if I can't do that, then I'm not like enjoying that process. So I don't know, landscapes and foliage and flowers and like seascapes, I just think there's a lot of freedom there and they're just
Hmm.
all around really fun to paint.
So when someone looks at a scene and then looks at your interpretation of that scene, what would you say the main differences are? What can you make that person see in the scene through your painting that they would probably not be able to see it if they're just looking at the scene themselves?
I think lighting, I really am in love with lighting because I think it educates us on what's really happening. Without lighting, we wouldn't see anything. Um, I'm, it doesn't necessarily matter what the subject is for me. I'm really attracted to the lighting scenario.
Hmm.
Like, um, the other day I went out, daffodils are starting to bloom here because we're going into spring, and I went out and photographed a bunch of them. And just the lighting on them was so gorgeous, and all of those different shades and shifts in value. I think since I see that and pay attention to that, I bring that into my paintings to where people are like, man, I didn't realize there were so many shifts in value in a daffodil. Or like this tree is casting the shadow and I portray it as much cooler, which makes the grass next to it much warmer. So I think like that contrast and play with light is super important to me. It's usually why I
Awesome.
choose to paint something is its lighting.
Wow. You are doing a live demo with us on April 13th,
Hmm.
right? What will you be portraying in that session?
So I will be painting one of my favorite things to paint, which is essentially a white building. White buildings cast really, really beautiful shadows. So, your white building is going to be really, really bright and warm, but then its shadows are going to be the total opposite and they're going to be super, super cool. So I'm painting this landscape that has like this old, like decrepit white barn. So there's just a lot of textures in that, but the lighting scenario is really beautiful. So I'll be teaching, atmospheric perspective, how to portray the sky as receding in space, how to push those mountains or those hills back in the background, and then how to bring everything forward. But then, like, the main focal point is that white barn and the lighting that's happening to it.
Hmm.
I'm also going to break it down and do some initial sketches with just like two values and show the power of like tonal sketches
Hmm.
because if you just do two values, we can understand almost anything. And that essentially is the most important part. If you can get your value structure accurate and correct, then the rest is just you pushing color.
Cool.
So
So we will be able to witness your passion for landscapes and light in this live demo. Okay, I need to watch
yes,
this. And that's on April 13th at noon Eastern Time. Link for that will
yeah.
be in the post associated with this episode at etherlab.com/Holman. Okay, Gouache, back to gouache. Would you be able to share with us some tips on how to work with gouache?
Yes. So I started using gouache where I would put it on the palette. I would use it, but then I would let it dry, and then I would keep using that. So essentially, I was using dry gouache. I have transitioned out of that to where I'm not using dry gouache. It was mainly like a paint conservation, like I just couldn't, if I can reactivate it, then I'm not going to toss it, basically. So I have transitioned out of that, and I have found that my paintings have really changed. They're a lot juicier, they're a lot more textured. So I have this little like airtight case that I just pour my paint into, instead of using tubes every time, because you don't really know how much you need. So I've transitioned into essentially wet gouache, and that's only really what I use. And I think for anyone that's starting out with gouache, that's going to be weird, that's going to be scary, but something that you can do is start thin and get thicker. So the reason I love gouache so much is just because it's simple. All you need is water. You don't need Gamsol, you don't need linseed oil. It's not acrylic where it's drying on you before you can even mix a color. You can just reactivate it if that does happen. So yeah, anyway, with gouache and a lot of other paint, if you just start thinner and get thicker, I think that'll be really beneficial. Like, you don't want to lay down a straight out of the tube brush stroke as your first brush stroke, unless you know it's like totally accurate. It's really cool because you can almost start it as a watercolor painting and then slowly get more opaque on the areas that you need to be more opaque. So like if I'm painting this tree scene, I might paint the sky and the distant trees more like a watercolor. So those edges are really soft. And then you just get thicker with the paint as you come closer to the viewer. So physically, the paint is thicker, which that will give the illusion that these things are closer. But then also you can get really clean, sharp edges. So paint consistency is super important. That's probably like my first tip. Most
Awesome.
important tip, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So good. Okay, this is an amazing interview already. Yeah, I'm so happy. I just need to express the happiness because you are so full of life. You are so
Oh,
full of life. It's refreshing. Um,
thanks. Yeah, my partner said the other day, out of nowhere, he's just like, "Man, you are so expressive." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I am." So,
well, if she says it, it's
yeah,
true, and it is true. Like,
yeah.
and it shows through the art you make, the way you talk. It shows. It's really refreshing. One last thing before we go. Famous last words. Anything you'd like to tell our audience before we wrap up? Anyone, either struggling with finding their voice, finding energy to start their own projects because it's so hard. Anything at all that you'd like to tell them?
So I think my biggest thing, and I made a YouTube video about this recently, is like how to stay creative and motivated. My biggest thing, and I know it's harder than like just saying it sounds easier. I know it's harder than this, obviously, but my biggest thing is that you must create to ignite creativity. So if you want to do that thing, thinking about it and pushing it off and procrastinating, that's not getting you anywhere. You're not engaging those creative muscles. And as hard as it is to actually start, you have to start. You have to create to ignite the creativity, like to get that juice flowing, those muscles, strengthening. Sometimes I just don't want to do anything. I don't want to create. But then once I do, my brain's like, oh, yes, like this is what you needed. It's that dopamine fix. And I just think if you're a creative individual, you're listening to this, obviously you're creative. And if you're putting something off, just start it, start somewhere, because that will make ideas flow, that will get your inspiration going. Hopefully you get in the zone where like time is an illusion and you don't even know how many hours are passing. If you can get to that point, turn your phone off and just start creating. That's like my biggest thing. Obviously, like I said, I know it's not always that easy. If you're feeling depressed, obviously we've all got pandemic fatigue, but I think if you can just make yourself do it, good things will follow. Only bigger and better things follow that.
And that's it for today. Tell us, what was the latest piece of art that made you smile or take any positive action? Let us know in the comment section of the post associated with this interview at etchrlab.com/Holman. That's etchrlab.com/HOLMAN. Or if you're watching on YouTube, simply let us know in the comment section below. If you're enjoying the podcast, please help us keep the show alive. You can subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts at etchrlab.com/go/Apple. Or if you're more of a YouTube viewer, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our most recent videos. Sharing is caring and every little bit helps. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Until then, let's make more art.